Shalom. So I want to talk about why is it important for a woman to be a virgin, right? Now we're going to go through Deuteronomy chapter 22 and we're going to look at also the psycho-spiritual aspect of this, right? So this is the book of Deuteronomy chapter 22 and verse 18. It says, sorry, Deuteronomy chapter 22 and verse 13. It says, if a man take a wife and go in unto her and hate her. No, when it says wife, it's the same thing that you call boyfriend, girlfriend. It's not separate from when a person wears a ring. It says when you go in unto her, right? So if a man take a wife and go in unto her and hate her, because you have a lot of stupid men out there that the moment they lie with a woman, they now perceive that woman as stupid. I perceive that she's low. Then you need to understand how they perceive themselves then. To think that once a woman lie with them, to think that once a woman lies with them, the woman becomes worthless. It means that you have to be worthless, right? And this is where they start to do what? Try to get their friends to go and, mess with you. Because what? They need to convince themselves of certain beliefs that they hold. They need to prove that belief to be true. So they will do that, right? It's not about the woman. It's about their distorted belief system, right? So there are a lot of men out there like that. It says, and give occasions of speech against her and bring up an evil name upon her. She's stupid, she's foolish, she's up, the double word and all of those things, right? It says, and bring up an evil name upon her and say, I took this woman, and when I came to her, I found her not a maid. Because a lot of these older men are now saying, oh, I want a virgin, we want virgins and so forth. How many virgins you already got and destroyed them? You see what I'm saying? So there are a lot of these men that are out there, right? It says, then shall the father of the damsel and her mother, so the parents, right? Notice it says the father and the mother. So what is this telling you about the woman and the virginity? Why the father and the mother would have that? So it's not like in this society where they tell you that you need to wait until you're 18 years. That's the law of the land, and this is why so many people struggle with, lust and sexual urges and inordinate affections and so forth, because they tricked you into believing that you have to wait until 18. And so you start to struggle from the time you start to go through that maturing phase up until 18. So you probably say have 6 years of struggling right there, don't know how to control it, you're just trying to do it and you're fighting. And guess what? Then you give in. You give in because you don't know how to control it. You're not supposed to fight against your nature, but that is for another time. It says, then shall the father of the damsel and her mother take and bring forth the tokens of the damsel's virginity unto the elders of the city in the gate. So what you're seeing here is that this is why it's important. This is why it's important to understand this whole virginity thing is about the female, is about the woman, not about the man. Which woman is gonna say, "Oh, I want a man that's a virgin"? Let's be honest. Is that part of your whatever you look for in a man? Do you look for a man that is a virgin? This is the reason why nature itself can prove a woman to be a virgin, but not a man. This is why your mothers, your parents, they take you to doctors. Which one of you take your sons to doctors to check if he's a virgin? But a lot of you do that with your daughters because even nature is telling you that, but you hold certain Western beliefs that is trying to override the knowledge that nature is teaching you. This is why we're so backwards, fighting against nature rather than trying to understand it. Right? It says, and take and bring forth the tokens of the damsel's virginity unto the elders of the city in the gate. So at this point, what you used to do is you would keep a white sheet. So when it's time for a man to go in unto your daughter, that's the sheet that they would use. So the blood, that's the token of her virginity, the blood. That would be that would stain the white sheet, and they would keep that as the token to prove, to say, no, when you lie with my daughter, she was a virgin. I still have the sheet to prove it. I still have the blood upon it. So you don't wash it, you keep it as evidence, right? It says, and the damsel's father shall say unto the elders, I gave my daughter unto this man to wife, and he hateth her. So the father would see that this man is a reasonable man or comes from a good family and whatever. So he gives his daughter's hand in marriage to that family, to that man, right? Now it says, and he hateth her. Verse 17, and lo, he hath given occasions of speech against her, saying, I found not thy daughter a maid, and yet these are the tokens of my daughter's virginity, and they shall spread the cloth before the elders of the city. So he's now proving that here's a sheet with the blood, and this man is speaking lies. He's bringing a false report against my daughter, right? It says, and the elders of that city shall take that man and chastise him. So a lot of you men who are getting these virgins and doing what you're doing with them, discarding them the moment you lie with them, this is what it says, and the elders of that city shall take that man and chastise him. So guess what? This is what you call jungle justice. You understand? Not to take the life, but you know, it should be given unto the city for the elders and so forth to do these things. Because with the law of the land, it supports these things. There's no justice, there's no judgment for a man who does this to a virgin, right? So that behavior gets to be reinforced and passed down. So the younger people start doing the same thing. The younger men, because they're learning from the men who are a little bit older than them, right? You see this a lot with the teenage cycle. 16, 17 years old, they do that type of pattern, right? Now, verse 19 says, and they shall amerce him 100 shekels of silver, and give them unto the father of the damsel, because he hath brought up an evil name upon a virgin of Israel. Don't mess with the daughters of Zion. It says, and she shall be his wife, he may not put her away all his days. So guess what? You can't even divorce her. Now that you did what you did, you try to bring shame and disgrace upon this man's house by calling his daughter, these names and so forth. No, you cannot even divorce her. She can be toxic as hell now. She can be whatever she wants. She can be a demon in your house. You cannot divorce her. The law of the land does not do this. They do not keep the laws of the Most High. Now, verse 20, we're going to go into a different aspect of it. So let's say this is true. Verse 20 says, but if this thing be true, and the tokens of the virginity not be found for the damsel, that means if they cannot bring the evidence to prove, right? It says, then they shall bring out the damsel to the door of her father's house, and the men of her city shall stone her with stones, that she die, because she had wrought folly in Israel, to play the whore in her father's house. To play what? The whore. The whore. So you see what happens when you have your daughter to wait until she's 18 instead of giving her to an husband? She plays the whore. You know where you see a lot of this? A lot of you guys, when you are 15, 16, you start picking out the windows to go out, because guess what? You think your Christian doctrines or your whatever philosophies you believe can prevent you or protect you from the urges that are rising up. So had your husband, had your father or your mother promised you to an husband that would be nurturing the intimacy in you, guess what? You wouldn't be strained. So a lot of these are what? Faults from the parents, because they believed in the American philosophies. A lot of these mothers, they will beat their young daughters because she did that. That same mother she got beaten for the same thing from her mother. So this is where Yahweh would say, she that is without sin, she that did not go out and have sex before a certain age, cast the first stone at your daughter. You're doing the same thing. You're trying to live a belief system as a reality, and it's not happening. It says, Then they shall bring out the damsel to the door of her father's house, and the men of her city shall stone her with stones, that she die, because she hath wrought folly in Israel, to play the whore in her father's house. You see what you are called in your father's house? This is what the Most High calls it, whore. But you're not going to tell your daughters that. You're not going to tell her that the Most High calls that behavior whore. So guess what? At the age of 16, she likes a man from this family, and guess what you do as a parent? You fight against it. So when you're fighting against it, what do you think her instinct will do? Tell her that there must be something right. Why her mother is against it so much. So the more you fight against it, is the more she desires it. And you know what happens to a lot of you? You cannot find your daughter. For months, she's gone to live with that man, probably in a different parish. Far. Because you never allowed her to understand the urges. You never opened the door for her to build a connection, right? This is why the scripture says in the book of First Corinthians that if they cannot contain, meaning if they cannot control the urges, you go and lie with each other, go and marry her, meaning go to bed with her. There's no sin, right? So shall thou put evil away from among you. So the Most High considers that as evil. So a lot of you parents, you need to revisit those subjects. All right, those belief system. Now this is book of First Corinthians chapter 7 and verse. We're gonna start at verse 8. It says, "I say therefore to the unmarried, unmarried. You know what unmarried means? It's, I say therefore to the unmarried and widows." This is what you call single women, right? Women who are absent husband, not husband as in the ring, but sexual relationships. I say therefore to the unmarried and widows, it is good for them if they abide even as I. Remember, Paul does not have that, so his nature is not that type of problem. So there are a lot of people out there who the urges of sex and so forth, lust has no dominion over their minds. They can go through, they don't have to do anything. It's just natural in them, just like the eunuch, right? A lot of people are like that. So, not a lot, some people are like that, right? It says, but if they cannot contain, let them marry. If you, the unmarried woman, if you cannot contain that, let them marry. Means go and have relationships, sexual relationships, right? It says, for it is better to marry than to burn. It is better for you to go into a relationship than to burn in your lust. This is what happens when they are young. They're struggling with these urges. They don't know what's happening to them. You're not teaching them anything. You're not telling them. You're not showing them anything. You're not teaching them how to go through it. So they burn in their lust because you didn't equip them with the proper knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to go through this process. They end up got burned in their lust. And guess what happens? Sometimes they go and talk to a guy that you don't like, and you know what you do? A lot of you cause that relationship to end because you don't like the guy, and then you give her to another man, or you allowed her or cause her to find another man. What does the Most High call that? We need to understand that men and women are not the same. Our natures, our instincts, everything, they are different, right? So when these things happen to the woman at a young age, you know what happens? After a process of time, this is where she ends up being with a lot of guys, especially when they don't have that proper knowledge and so forth. They take their 20s for the time to play around, mess around and do all these things that they want to do rather than be in a fruitful relationship. Oh, I'm too young. Oh, I'm not ready for that. I want to be free, right? So this is where they get a lot of relationship with different guys. So how it's not natural? This is not a conversation they would want to have with you. This is why when you ask a woman, like, how many men have you been with, they're not going to tell you the honest truth. So that's how she's carrying an underlying shame or guilt. because then you should be free enough to do what, to say, yes, I've been with 30 men. Last year alone, I've been with 15, because there's an underlying shame. So most of the time, you ask them how many men they've been with, they're just gonna say three, right? Because most of the times they probably lived with only three men. So what about the others that they were not living with? They don't count them because what? There's an underlying shame. This is why when you ask them how many men they've been with, that's a conversation they don't really want to get into with you. And if you find that they're avoiding that topic, then you know you gotta walk away, because like I said, marriage, when you're dealing with marriage, what you do on the dating table is to negotiate, and a man has to be grounded to negotiate these terms. And if these topics are being avoided, you know that that's bye bye. You finish your meal and you end the evening and you never call her again, because you're not going to allow her to have her way, not to change narratives to kind of normalize these behaviors. You're not accepting that. So until men stand their ground, these women will always be empowered with what? Foolish narratives. We're getting to the reality of the matter, right? So don't let her push the topic aside as if it should not matter to you. Of course, her what they call body count should matter to you. Of course, the amount of months she's been with in the past should matter to you, because you're the one that's going to deal with all the cleaning up process, right? So it should be it should matter to you. And if it doesn't matter to her as well, guess what? She should be comfortable enough to. I'm not saying she should air it on the internet, but I'm saying go one on one to have the conversation. That topic should be discussed so you can know whether you're going to negotiate it or not, because you're not going to blindly go into something. And if that cannot be discussed at the beginning, bye bye. And like I said, a lot of men are weak, so this is why they'll push these topics aside and go straight to bed with her. At that point, you already gave over yourself. That's weakness. If you cannot negotiate your terms before you lie with the woman, that's weakness. So at that point, if she thinks that her past doesn't matter, she's already run through. Now, if she has a belief that anything men can do, women can do it too. I'm talking in the context of, sexual matters, right? If she has that state of mind, bye bye. Everyone understand that men and women have two different makeup, right? The oxytocins, it influences emotion, it builds that connection with love. And if a woman finds herself that detached, it means that she's been with a lot of different men, not the same, different men, right? Because so much of this oxytocin has been released. And the more she does that with different men, it's the more detached she is. It doesn't work the same way with men. Now, back to the women in their 20s, from the age of 20 to 29, that's the time they don't want, when a man that has it together and whatever wants to be in a relationship with them, wants a family, they don't want that. They want freedom. They want to be independent. Independent, what it means is that when a woman if a woman is living in their father's house, right, there are certain things they cannot do because the parents are not stupid. They're gonna know whatever move is making. When a woman just lives with a young child and the child goes to bed, the woman can go in with a man at 12 o'clock and let the man leave at 4. The child doesn't even know that these things are happening. That's what independence does. There's freedom. She owes you no obligation. I mean, you can, whatever you want with her, give her all the attention, give her everything that she needs, feed every desires. But on her path, no, no obligation. I'm not committed to you. I'm independent. Her independent is not about financial stuff, because most of them they don't have it financially. But it means that they are independent from the bonds of a committed relationship. That's the independence. They reach the stage, a lot of them get to that stage where even the sex does not carry that meaning again. They're so numb. It's like a woman who has been through trafficking, and after when they got trafficked, they got drugged, and then it's paired with the sex. So they're in that numb state. They're not themselves again. It's just like when you see a prostitute on the street. A woman has to be mentally destroyed to be able to do what they're doing. No woman in the right state of their mind can do that. So when you see a woman in this state behaving in this way, she's numb. because the attachment she should have in this type of intercourse, she doesn't have that. She does not build those connections. She's too numb to do that. It's not something that she's consciously doing. She cannot do it. Some people say, oh, they don't do this or they won't do it, or it's not that they won't, it's that they cannot. They can't. When you're dealing with the past of the woman, you have to look on how she really feels about it. Like I mentioned earlier, does she feel that sense of guilt, sense of shame? Does she feel the remorse to know that she had placed herself in those situations or contributed somewhat to those situations? Because if she was not forced in, like trafficking, molested, rape, and so forth, if she was not in those cases and she voluntarily did these things and she doesn't feel any form of remorse but want to overlook the life that she was living between the ages of 20 to 29, if she wants to overlook that, that be fine with her, but make sure you don't overlook it. Don't allow it to go like that, because you want to know the reasons why she voluntarily did these things. A lot of women I talk a lot about the revenge sex already, and a lot of you guys know how that goes. A lot of you do it to spite your partner. What are the reasons why you are doing these things from ages 20 to 29? You need to understand what her past was like, and like I said, it cannot be pushed to the side. So these are things that you have to negotiate at the dating table. Her life, the clubbing phase of her life, the hookup stage, the internet dating, what you call it, online dating, the corn, self pleasures, all of these things you have to there is important to discuss them. And after they reach the passing through the 29, going into their 30s now, guess what happens? They really think, they convince themselves that what? They convince themselves that they are changing. That if it was a few years ago, I would do this and this, but now I'm more relaxed now. No. The reality is, now you have a daughter that's 17, 18 years old. Guess what? It's not that you are changing, it's men are withdrawing their attention from you. So you're not getting the attention that you used to get when you were 20. Now you have a young daughter, she's getting all that attention. You did not cool down, is men pull away their attention from you. And that's the reality that a lot of you will never accept. This is why you see more younger men who want that experience of lying with an older woman. You'll get a lot of attention from them. This is why when you're 38 going up, you start to look for younger men, because that's where you're gonna get attention. Men your age is not looking in your direction like that unless you're gonna go take a man from far. No, like I said, to understand her past is not to condemn her, but it's just to know exactly what you're getting into, right? Otherwise, you're gonna end up like Hosea. The Most High told him to take a wife of whoredom. This is the category of woman that is talking about. It's showing you how filthy we look in the eyes of the Most High, because we allow society to dictate and impose beliefs upon us, narratives upon us, and we're following those beliefs and thinking we're really free. No, this society wants you to be free from the Most High and be in bondage to lust and desires and fear and covet and all of those things. So you're being free. You want to free yourself from the Most High only to be slave to your desires? Really? You rather be a prisoner for desires and fears rather than a prisoner for the Most High? So back to what I'm saying, if you understand, if you're going through her past, is not to condemn her, but you're gonna have to decide about building a relationship and grace to know that, okay, now I know that you've been through all of this. I'm gonna pardon it, right? And you're gonna start new, meaning you cannot do anything that you used to do before. And most of the times, like I said, you have to take that woman away from her village to, far away. That's better to keep that prosperous relationship, because if a man from outside should go to that village, then, all the men in the area would be smartly laughing at him. And one day it might be showing. And then, so it's good sometimes that she really moves away to start over. But the relationship would have to be built upon grace, meaning you're pardoned from the past, but guess what? You cannot do any of those things again. So that relationship would have to start with honesty. It's not for condemnation, but a man who stands his ground will negotiate his terms before trying to get into bed. And he's not afraid of walking away if she's avoiding certain topics. If they cannot come to a certain agreeing covenant or agreement. So this is why you see it's easier for them to take weaker men who can empower them. And then as soon as they get empowered, guess what? They're gone again. They're just gonna feed up on the energies of these younger men, and then when they feel like they're built up enough, they just go. Like, or they'll seek to find a man who can outdo all the men in their past. That's gonna be a long journey. Shalom.